All right, welcome back. So when you think of nuclear power, what's the first image that comes to mind? Something absolutely enormous, right? A giant plant. Well, the future of nuclear fission might just be the complete opposite. Today, we are diving into its next chapter, this huge push to make nuclear smaller, safer, and maybe, just maybe, cheaper.
And really, that one question is the whole ballgame. It perfectly frames the entire debate and the evolution of nuclear energy. It's the big challenge that a whole new generation of engineers and scientists is desperately trying to solve.
So to really get where we're going, we've got to understand where we've been. Let's take a quick look back at the legacy of those traditional nuclear plants that have been powering our world for decades.
Here it is, the fundamental paradox of old-school nuclear power. On one hand, you get this incredible, rock-solid, reliable energy, what they call baseload power. It runs 24/7, and it's totally carbon-free during operation. Amazing! But on the other hand, you're hit with the reality of just staggering upfront costs, construction projects that take a decade or more, and a deep, deep public fear around safety and waste.
And that fear? It was really forged in the fire of two major events. Yet Chernobyl in '86, which was the story of a deeply flawed design and catastrophic human error. And then Fukushima in 2011, a totally different situation, a battle against an unbelievable force of nature. Even though they were so different, these accidents seared themselves into the public mind and did massive damage to the trust in nuclear technology.
So, with these huge challenges, a new question started to bubble up. What if we could just completely rethink what a nuclear reactor is? That question led to a brand new approach, Small Modular Reactors, or SMRs for short.
You know, the concept is actually pretty simple, but it's totally revolutionary. Instead of building one massive, custom, one-of-a-kind power plant on site, what if you could manufacture smaller reactors in a factory? Kind of like building cars on an assembly line. That's the whole idea behind SMRs.
This approach completely flips the old model on its head. You build the really complex stuff in a controlled factory, you ship the modules to the site, and then you assemble them. The goal here is to make building a nuclear plant faster, cheaper, and way more predictable, to finally get away from those giant, bespoke projects of the past.
So the big sales pitch for SMRs is that they solve the classic nuclear problems. Instead of economies of scale, building one huge thing to save money, they're chasing economies of series by mass-producing many identical smaller ones. They're also designed with passive safety systems, which is a fancy way of saying they rely on physics, like gravity, to shut down safely, not on external power or a person flipping a switch. And their smaller size means you can put them in more places, maybe even on the site of an old coal plant.
It all sounds fantastic on paper, doesn't it? But turning this promising idea into a practical, real-world power source, well, that's where it's facing some serious hurdles. Let's get into the reality check.
And this is where the SMR story gets really complicated. Because it turns out that for every advantage, there's a big challenge hiding in the wings. That lower upfront cost? It can actually mean a higher cost for every megawatt of electricity you generate. And those factory savings? They only kick in after you've paid the massive bill for the very first reactor. It's a classic chicken and egg problem.
This quote from critics really just captures the tough economic reality that's smacked into this first wave of SMR development. That promise of cheap nuclear power has, so far, pretty much remained just a promise.
Let's look at the poster child for SMRs in the United States, a company called NuScale. Their initial cost estimate for their flagship project was pegged at what seems like a manageable $3.6 billion. But by 2023, that number had ballooned to over $9 billion. The projected price for the power just got way too high for any customers to buy in, and the project was ultimately canceled. And that sent a huge shockwave through the industry.
And even the promise of less waste gets complicated. You'll often hear the industry say SMRs are more efficient. But some scientific analysis points to a problem with their small size, something called neutron leakage. Basically, more of the particles that drive the reaction escape the core, which could actually create a larger volume of radioactive waste over time. So the picture is way more nuanced than a simple less waste soundbite. But despite these major setbacks, the story is not over. Not by a long shot. The global push for SMRs is now moving from theory into commercial reality, with the very first projects starting to come online.
And we are seeing this happen right now. Russia has a floating SMR power plant that's been up and running since 2019. China has also connected its first SMR to its grid.
And even NuScale, after that big cancellation, announced a new plan, this time with the Tennessee Valley Authority, specifically to provide that super reliable power needed for massive data centers. When you look ahead, the projections are incredibly bullish. Some studies see this market growing to as much as 700 gigawatts by 2050. Now, to put that into perspective, that's roughly double the entire generating capacity of Germany today. The vision is for SMRs to become a key player in the global energy transition, especially in North America and Europe.
So here's the crucial point. We are at a crossroads. The technology is here, the first reactors are coming online. But the big question, whether the industry can truly overcome these immense economic and regulatory hurdles to deliver on that promise of cheaper, faster, and safer nuclear power, well, that chapter is still being written.